Let's talk to Richard Tice, who is here, of course, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Richard, very good morning to you.
Well, good morning, and your listeners and viewers will be pleased to know that I would not be breaking out into song. And frankly, I'm not sure that there's much to be celebrating at all, given the state of the nation as you've been talking about this morning. And I, as you've just touched on, I've been alerting the solar farm developers, Mike, who want to desecrate hundreds and hundreds of square miles of our glorious British countryside and farmland with these revolting solar panels. Yeah. And I've made it very clear to them that there's no mandate for this whatsoever. In Lincolnshire alone, just get this, there are plans for about 100 square miles of solar farms. Some villages are going to be completely and utterly surrounded by solar panels, alongside which will be these very dangerous battery energy storage systems that when they catch fire, the fire brigade can't put out. As the Lincolnshire Fire Brigade confirmed to us in a letter, they just have to just watch. And then they produce toxic fumes and contaminants into the soil. So we don't want this.
No, it's absolutely outrageous, isn't it? Because as you say, there's no mandate for it. Nobody was asked about this. And what about this pledge that the Labour government made that we won't be buying any solar panels from China if they've been made by slave labour? Well, it doesn't seem to me as though they've found anywhere else to get them, have they?
There are very few other places that make solar panels at scale. And the great irony, of course, and China have been very clever at this, is that they're building coal-fired power stations to make lots of cheap electricity in order to produce solar panels and wind turbines much cheaper than anybody else, sometimes allegedly using slave labour. I suspect there's no real doubt about that. And people are left with no choice. And so the absolute irony that this government wants to cover our land with lots of solar panels, produced with slave labour, produced using coal-fired power stations. I mean, the whole thing is completely and utterly absurd. Solar panels on roofs, fine, you make a very strong argument and sell the electricity to the occupier underneath. That can ease the pressure on the national grid. But covering our productive farmland that we should be using to grow food is absolute insanity.
Yeah. And are they acquiring this land by hook or by crook? I mean, how is that process working? Because these people that you've written to, the Island Green Power people, which is planning a 2,700-acre project, apparently, I mean, how are they getting hold of the land?
Well, primarily they lease the land from farmers, and we've made it very clear to the developers and their shareholders and investors, and indeed their lenders, that we will use every lever at our disposal under a reform government to stop the subsidies and to force them to think again. In other words, don't invest in the first place. But they can also use it now transpires, what they call compulsory purchase powers. So that if a particular landowner doesn't want to sell out or lease out to these solar farm developers, and that's in a sort of an important part within a bigger planned solar farm, then it turns out these developers can compulsory purchase that land. And I mean, that's just doubling down on the wrong, frankly.
Yeah. And I was told this some months ago, and I don't know whether you've had an opportunity to look into it. I can't remember if we spoke about it before, but there's a sort of loophole in the law on rural land, apparently, where if you've had the land occupied by solar panels and used as a solar panel sort of field, if you like, for a long enough period, that can then change the use of the land, and it can then cease to be arable land, and it can then be building land, and you can actually then build houses on it.
Yes, there have been those allegations, and I think the answer is that is a grey area that's unknown. I mean, it's obviously a ridiculous statement, but some people are very concerned about that. Frankly, we should be concerned about anything under this deeply socialist government. I'm actually most concerned about stories that I'm reading into where the land under these solar panels, if it's like sort of left like that for 20, 25 years, it becomes completely organically dead. And therefore, even if the solar panels were removed, it would take many years for it to be brought back into agricultural use. And possibility of contaminants coming off from the rain off the solar panels onto the soil. These are very serious concerns that need to be clarified. We just know so little about this. What we do know is that we need to be producing more of our own food. And if you put these hundreds of square miles of solar farms in Norfolk, Suffolk, Lincolnshire, and many other places, then you're doing the opposite of food security.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Let's talk a little bit about the other problem for this government, this ridiculous one-in, one-out scenario, which is so ludicrous now that it's fallen apart literally before their very eyes. I mean, it fell apart pretty much as soon as they announced it. Yesterday, the Daily Mail were in Gravelines over in Calais, very close to Calais, and they describe what looks like a sort of dingy rush hour, which goes on from about 7 a.m. Until about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, where one canoe, one dinghy after another sort of turns up, people pile on it, and off it goes to Britain. And so on the first day of this one in, one out, it looks as though at the very least dozens, possibly hundreds came, and nobody left.
As you say, it appears that it's hundreds in every day and none out at all, particularly when we now discover that our friends, the lefty, lovey human rights lawyers, if they can lodge a human rights claim here in the UK for someone who arrives, then they don't now qualify under this new absurd Labour scheme. So the whole thing is a complete and utter farce. And here we are a year later. We know that the migrant numbers so far this year in 2025 are up about 50% compared to last year. And what you've just shown there yesterday, hundreds more coming to the UK, shows there's no deterrent factor whatsoever. Actually, we're becoming an ever greater, ever larger magnet. And the British people have had enough. I don't know where this ends, but it's not going to end well. It really isn't. People are raging mad. And there was just yesterday, the gendarmes were on the beach, waving them off. Funny, isn't it, that a few weeks ago, the BBC happened to be on the beach, and that was the one day where a gendarme happened to put a knife into one of the boats in order to deflate it. Why aren't they doing that every day, all day, to stop these boats?
I know.
Or was it just a complete stitch-up picture made up to suit the Prime Minister and President Macron?
Yes, it was definitely a stunt, because, I mean, I was saying this week, I wrote a piece in The Sun yesterday, that this is actually going to encourage more migrants to come, not fewer, because what you're going to do now is people who actually get to France and apply legally through an online application form to get asylum in this country. And as long as they can say that they've got somebody that they know here, or they've got family here, they're fleeing some kind of terrible situation, they will be invited in to Britain, and they won't have to bother getting on a dinghy. They'll just be able to come legally.
The whole thing is so absurd. It's truly unbelievable. And where does this end? The irony now, where you've got people in the UK, slightly ironically, saying they want to take a one-way ticket to France so that they can apply, and then they can come back and get free accommodation, free heating, and
a credit card,
free food. I mean, it's utterly ludicrous. And there's only one way you stop this. That is, we leave the ECHR, we rip up the Human Rights Act, so these human rights lawyers can't carry on with their ridiculous trade. And we've got to pick up and safely take back a variant of what the Australians did. We know it works. The Australians successfully did it, and we know we're entitled to do it under the United Nations 1982 Convention of the Law at Sea Treaty, which I have read cover to cover.
And you've said this before, and people who challenge you end up having to give up because they don't know the law. Let's talk about what Starmer says now, though, about taxes as well, because just before we let you go, he was talking yesterday about the fact that he can't tell us yet whether there's going to be any taxes, but he can tell us what his focus is going to be on. Have a look.
The focus will be living standards, and we will build on what we've done in the first year of this government, but the focus will very much be on living standards and making sure people feel better off. What's really important is that I'm very clear about our focus, which will be on living standards and making sure that people feel better off, partly because more money is coming into their pocket in the first place through better wages, and partly because we're bearing down on costs like mortgages and other costs to everyday families.
Yeah, we've got a new phrase for you. Everyday families, Richard, that's the new one.
Well, I'm going to focus. I really am going to focus, very focused, on the issue of taxes. If we focus on taxes, Mike, then we can focus on making people better off.
Yeah.
I mean, what on earth is he talking about? Saying that he's stabilised the economy.
Well,
the economy is going down the tubes.
No, exactly.
Hundreds of thousands of jobs are being destroyed. I've got a theme park in Skegness in the middle of holiday season. Get this, that's closed 2 days a week because of the national insurance increases, because of the cost of energy. I tell you what, that theme park owner's focus is to stop losing money.
Yeah.
And we've got a black hole that is re-emerging in the economy. They're going to have to put taxes up ever more. You've got bond markets that I can tell you are very focused on the state of their concerns about the British economy. And it's very, very fragile.
Yeah.
It really is. And that's all because they've ruined it. They've done the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be cutting wasteful government spending, of which there is vast, vast amounts, cutting daft regulations. That creates the conditions for growth. And when you've got growth emerging, then you can have performance-related tax cuts. That's how you get the economy growing back to 2.5%, 3.5%, like we had in the 80s and 90s. And by the way, that was the time when we had cheap energy, because guess what? We were using oil and gas, not solar and wind.
I know. It's an absolute shambles, and it just gets worse and worse and worse.